Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Fluent and Fearless, the podcast for you and for anyone who speaks English and wants to communicate clearly, confidently, and without fear in any situation. I'm Katherine Arthur, a speech-language pathologist, American English accent and pronunciation instructor, and a radio broadcaster, and also a healthcare professional. And today I'd like to speak directly to healthcare professionals, especially our ESL friends. So a shout out to doctors, nurses, pharmacists, therapists, medical assistants, technicians, researchers, and the list goes on. If you work in healthcare and speak English as a second language, this episode is for you because healthcare communication is different. The pressure is higher. The conversations move quickly. The stakes, they're emotional. And sometimes you only have a few seconds to explain something clearly. Now, when I talk to my ESL healthcare professional friends, they'll tell me things like they feel confident clinically, but they get nervous when they speak quickly in English. They'll also tell me that they start to over-explain when they are speaking under pressure. And then if a patient interrupts them, they start to lose their point. And most of all, they want to sound calmer and more confident when they speak English. And honestly, wanting to sound more confident and use fewer words, well, that makes complete sense. Because when communication matters deeply, sometimes people start speaking more because they want to avoid misunderstanding. So today we're going to talk about something important. In healthcare, clear communication is often more powerful than complicated communication. So let's talk about how to communicate effectively with patients, families, coworkers, and peers without talking too much in those situations. As we discussed in our last episode of Fluent and Fearless, this is something that we call rambling, and it's usually not a language problem, it's a pressure problem. That's because when people feel nervous, rushed, judged, or put on the spot, their brain often starts trying to buy time with extra words. So today I want to help my healthcare professional friends become more concise, more organized, and more confident during high-pressure speaking moments. We'll learn why rambling happens, why it gets worse under pressure, especially in healthcare situations. And most important of all, how to speak more clearly and confidently on the spot without sounding robotic or overly rehearsed. Let's get into it. I'm Katherine Arthur, and this is Fluent and Fearless. Now let's imagine that we're in a healthcare setting, and let's imagine a patient's daughter is asking a nurse, "Is my father getting better?" Now a nervous speaker might say something like, "Well, we're still evaluating several things and the doctor reviewed the labs earlier and there are a few concerns, but overall we're continuing treatment and trying to see how he responds, etc., etc., etc." Now notice how the main message gets buried. Now listen to this version. Your father is stable right now, and that's good news. We're continuing treatment and monitoring him closely overnight. Do you see how that's shorter and calmer and easier to understand? And that's important too because in emotional situations, which we know happens a lot in the healthcare setting, clarity feels reassuring. And what the family is looking for more than anything is reassurance. So now let's take a look at some communication with coworkers. Imagine you're giving a quick patient update during a shift change. A rambling version might sound something like this. "So the patient was complaining earlier about pain, and I think it started sometime after lunch, and we gave medication, and then later the blood pressure was a little elevated, but then it improved, etc., etc., etc." That's difficult to follow quickly. But now listen to this version. The patient reported increased pain after lunch. Pain medication was given at 2 p.m., and the blood pressure improved afterward. Now, do you notice the difference? Organized communication helps your coworkers trust the information quickly. And in healthcare, clarity saves time. So let's talk about why healthcare professionals sometimes ramble. That's because healthcare professionals often feel pressure to sound knowledgeable, avoid mistakes, explain every detail, sound compassionate, and above all, respond quickly. That's a big combination, and it's a combination that can create something called verbal multitasking. Now, if you're an ESL healthcare professional, that means your brain is trying to think medically, translate, monitor pronunciation, and organize information all at the same time. So what happens then? You might start to repeat yourself, add unnecessary details, stop a sentence and start over again, or talk longer than necessary. And during stressful moments, that can become even more noticeable. But here's the good news. You do not need perfect English to sound professional. You need structure, clarity, and calm delivery. This will help you become a more organized speaker of English, and that will help you become a more confident speaker of English as well. So how can you become a more organized speaker of English? Well, I've got some strategies that you'll find very helpful. Strategy number 1, lead with the main point. One of the strongest communication habits in healthcare is this: say the most important part first. Patients and coworkers often feel overwhelmed already. If your explanation takes too long to reach the point, people can start to get confused. For example, instead of saying, "Well, based on the lab work and considering everything that happened earlier," try simplifying your statement, such as, "Your lab results look stable," or "We're going to monitor you overnight," or "The medication is helping, but we still need to watch your symptoms." Those are all great examples of what you need to do. You need to lead with the headline first, then explain your details afterward if necessary. This immediately makes you sound clearer and more confident, and it immediately gives your patient the information that they need. Strategy number 2, to sound like a more organized speaker of English, is to use short sentences because those make you sound more confident. Many ESL speakers believe that longer sentences may sound more professional, but actually in healthcare, shorter sentences are often better. And why is that? Well, it's because patients are stressed, families are emotional, and coworkers are quite busy. So simple communication reduces confusion. For example, instead of saying, "So what we're basically trying to do right now is monitor the situation carefully and see how things progress," try shortening that to, "We're monitoring the situation closely." That's short, calm, clear, and it sounds professional. Strategy number 3 to sound like a more organized speaker of English is to use pause language instead of filling space. When healthcare professionals feel nervous, they often fill silence with extra words. But silence is not a communication emergency. You are allowed to pause, especially in healthcare. In fact, pauses can make you sound thoughtful, calm, and trustworthy. So instead of filling space with words like or so or basically or what I'm trying to say, use professional pause phrases like, "Let me explain that clearly," or "The main concern right now," or "Here's what we know so far," or try, "There are 2 important things to remember," or finally, "The good news is." Do you see how these phrases are useful? They can create structure while giving your brain time to think. Strategy number 4 for ESL healthcare professionals to sound like more organized speakers of English: organize information into small chunks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, patients remember information better when it's grouped clearly. So instead of giving one long explanation, divide your information into smaller parts. For example, try saying, "There are 3 things I'd like you to watch for. First, increased pain. Second, fever. Third, difficulty breathing." Now, using this structure helps patients, family members, and even coworkers during handoffs or team discussions. Clear organization reduces rambling automatically. Strategy number 5 to help you sound like a more organized speaker of English: don't confuse fast speaking with competence. Now, this one is important. In fast-paced healthcare environments, many people think that if they speak quickly, they'll sound more fluent. But that's not true because fast speaking often creates unclear pronunciation, disorganized explanations, and listener confusion. Calm speaking sounds more competent than rushed speaking. Even native English-speaking healthcare workers slow down during important conversations, especially when discussing medications, procedures, discharge instructions, or emotional situations. You are allowed to slow down. Fast speaking is not the same as effective speaking. That's because one of the most powerful communication skills is the ability to pause before speaking. Even a 1-second pause helps organize your thoughts. A very brief pause, instead of rushing, sounds more thoughtful and confident. And strategy number 6 for ESL healthcare professionals to sound more confident when speaking English is to focus on connection, not perfection. Sometimes ESL healthcare professionals become so focused on grammar or pronunciation that they forget the real goal, and that goal is connection. Patients will usually remember whether you listened to them, whether you sounded calm, and whether you made them feel safe, not whether every sentence was grammatically perfect. A clear, compassionate message is far more important than perfect English. Now here's a very helpful structure that you can practice this week. It consists of 3 items: your main point, a brief explanation, and the next step. For example, your blood pressure looks much better today. The medication seems to be helping. We'll continue monitoring you this afternoon. Now that's simple, organized, and professional. Now this structure of the main point, a brief explanation, and the next step works beautifully for patient communication, team updates, shift reports, and difficult conversations. So practice that. Give it a try. I guarantee you will succeed. So before we get ready to wrap things up, if you work in healthcare and speak English as a second language, I want to say this clearly. Remember, your accent does not reduce your intelligence. Your pauses do not reduce your professionalism. And needing an extra second to organize your thoughts does not make you less capable. You already bring valuable knowledge, skill, and compassion to your patients every single day. The goal is not perfect English. The goal is communication that is clear, calm, and connected. And with that, I'm Katherine Arthur. Thank you so much for spending this time with me on Fluent and Fearless. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another ESL healthcare professional or anyone who wants to speak more confidently under pressure. And once again, I want you to remember that you don't need perfect English to sound confident. Clear communication is not about saying more. It's about making your ideas easier to follow. And when you stop putting pressure on yourself to sound perfect, something wonderful begins to happen. You start to sound more confident, and that happens naturally. So before we say goodbye, here's one more thing I want you to remember, that if you speak English as a second language, you're already doing something incredibly impressive. You're building a career, contributing ideas, navigating meetings, and creating relationships in a language that's not your first, and that takes a lot of skill. But even highly educated, highly capable professionals sometimes feel like their spoken English doesn't fully reflect how knowledgeable or confident they truly are. Does this happen to you? Maybe people occasionally ask you to repeat yourself, or maybe meetings move so quickly that it feels hard to jump in. Or maybe you simply want your voice to sound as confident as you already feel you are inside. Well, that's exactly why I created this free guide called Speak with Confidence. It's packed with practical tips to help ESL professionals sound more natural, clear, and professional when speaking American English. You can download your free copy today. It's easy. Just visit the Pronouns, Speech, and Accent Specialist website, pronouncespeech.com. Just click that blue button near the top of the page, and the guide will be on its way to you. It's that simple. Again, pronouncespeech.com. for the free Speak with Confidence guide, pronouncespeech.com. I would love for you to have that free guide. It is so informational and so helpful. And I'd also love for you to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Look us up at Pronouns, Speech, and Accent Specialists. And you can also find me, Katherine Arthur, on LinkedIn. So look us up. I genuinely love hearing from listeners and connecting with ESL professionals from all over the world. So once again, I will say this: you do not need perfect English to make a powerful impact. You just need to be clear and confident. So until next time, keep speaking, keep showing up, and keep reminding yourself that your voice deserves to be heard. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you next time on Fluent and Fearless.